Oh, hi, my name is Tandy McConnell. For about 20 years, I was a professor of history at Columbia College in South Carolina. Then a few years ago, I decided to retire and do something different. So right now I'm teaching eighth graders. And that is way different from teaching college students. I'm delighted to be here with you. I've been judging with We the People for 15 or 20 years. I lost count, and I'm excited to be here with you.
John and students, my name is Barry Anderson. I'm an Associate Justice on the Minnesota Supreme Court. I'm the senior member of the court. And I'm delighted to be part of today's activities. I have been associated with the program for over 25 years in one form or another. I had a team that I was an assistant coach here, and then I later had the opportunity to serve as a judge here at the national competition, and I'm delighted to have that opportunity to do this under very unique circumstances. As Churchill once observed, difficulties mastered are opportunities won, and we're going to do that today. We're hoping to have a very successful conversation.
Hello, everyone. Nice to see you all. My name is Teena Gabrielson. I'm a professor of political science at the University of Wyoming. So I'm here in Laramie, Wyoming, and I teach political philosophy, sometimes American political thought. This is my first time judging nationals, so it's going to be exciting for me. I'm looking forward to hearing your presentations, and it's nice to see you all.
If you'd be so kind as to introduce yourselves and your coach and faculty advisors who might be with us today.
Good afternoon. We are Unit 1 from Wauwatosa West, Wisconsin's wildcard. I'm Olivia Casper.
I'm Melissa Ranieri.
I'm Zoe Davis.
And I'm Brooke Brady. And we are here today on behalf of our teacher, Mr. Chad Matesky, our mentors, and the entire community of Wauwatosa.
Well, very good. We're delighted to be able to have this conversation with you about Unit 1. If everyone is ready, I'm prepared to read the question and you may begin your statement. John, are you ready to perform your duties as timer and so forth?
I certainly am.
All right, very, very good. So our question today is Unit 1. What are the philosophical and historical foundations of the American political system? Question 3. Aristotle asserts in Politics that it is not the form of government, ruled by the one, the few, or the many, that matters most, but rather the ends of government that are most important. Where in the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution did the framers set forth the ends of government? How did the framers differ, if at all, about how the ends of government should be prioritized? And which of the ends of government set forth in the Declaration and the Constitution appear to have the highest priority today? If you are ready to begin, we are ready to listen. The floor is yours.
The ends of government are vital, but we as a panel disagree with Aristotle's dissertation that the form of government does not matter. Ends are better fulfilled by certain forms of government. This is why we, as a democratic republic, have been able to ensure general happiness and safety for the people, even after 232 years of trial and error.
The main ends of our government were incorporated into our important historical documents, such as the Declaration and the Constitution. Thomas Jefferson, inspired by Locke's second treatise, wrote in the Declaration that people have certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and continues to explain that the government is instituted to protect these rights. Another end within the Declaration is that we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. The ending sentence of the Declaration affirms that we, as separate sovereign states and individuals, are uniting under one government to protect each other and our mutual interests.
The preamble of our Constitution outlines the reasons why the framers created the government that they did. Article 1, Section 8 outlines the powers of Congress, giving them the ability to execute the ends of government described in the preamble. Article 1, Section 9 and 10, as well as the Bill of Rights, elaborate on what the government, both state and federal, cannot do, reflecting on the idea that a limited government best secured their ends. This is also embodied in Article 4, Section 4, which guarantees a republican form of government, an objective of American government since the founding era.
The framers differed with their views on the ends of government, as some believed in working more towards security and happiness, while others believed in protection of rights. James Madison, in particular, outlined his ends in his Address to the States as justice, good faith, honor, and gratitude. He prioritized the protection of minority rights and the will of the people, which were the inspiration behind his creation of the Bill of Rights and strong beliefs in a Republican form of government. Alexander Hamilton, by contrast, wanted a government that had a stable, controlled economy and powerful military, as those guaranteed security. He was inspired by the philosophy of Thomas Hobbes, which is why in Federalist 70, he demonstrated a want for a strong, energetic executive and life terms.
In opposition, Thomas Jefferson thought we needed almost no federal government interference and that small local government should have primacy in order to better protect our natural rights and security. In a more moderate manner, John Adams thought government which will produce the greatest quantity of happiness is best. He believed this was best accomplished with government that has checks and balances, including separation of powers which would prevent tyranny and corruption.
The government's goal today is to preserve the general happiness and stability. None of the ends are mutually exclusive. Classically, Republican ideas and natural rights go hand in hand, though there are different ideas on how to preserve them. According to Kant in his categorical imperative, no human is capable of wishing malintent upon themselves, and in a representative democracy, that carries into the general population. People wish to uphold ends, but they cannot agree on the ways to achieve them, which is a central issue in many national debates. The natural rights side of the gun control debate wants to protect people's Second Amendment right and their ability to defend themselves.
The classically Republican side wants to protect people by prohibiting guns. Senator Bernie Sanders, for example, called for a complete ban on all assault weapons. This can also be seen in the healthcare debate, as the classically Republican idea is that universal healthcare benefits all, whereas the natural rights side protects people's individual choice as they can opt out of health insurance.
Despite the challenges we have experienced in achieving our ends of government, we have been mostly successful in our experiment as a democratic republic. Regardless of the modern era and the struggles it brings, we still strive to establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty. Thank you. This concludes our statement. We are now ready for your follow-up.
So I'm interested, we talked a little bit at the very beginning of your statement about Aristotle, and I'd like to pursue that a little bit. I'm just wondering what you think Aristotle would have thought of, or how he would have viewed progressive reforms in the last 75 years or so, such as initiative, recall, and referendum. Would he have seen these things as consistent with the kind of government that he believed we should have, or inconsistent?
I think he would have viewed it as inconsistent because Aristotle explicitly wanted philosopher kings to rule, and recalls and referendums includes removing people from office and having no stability, and thus having none of the stableness he wanted from philosopher kings.
I believe Zoe was actually talking about Plato there, and I actually think Aristotle would be okay with the political reform we've had today because he believed that a stable government was best, even though he thought it would be best in the form of a polity, which kept the rich and the poor from warring with each other. But in a representative democracy like we have, the people need to be kept calm and have their ideals represented in government to avoid those states or wars. And with recalls and such, that actually upholds his ideas of stability.
If I remember Aristotle right, he seemed to be focused on, he was looking at several different models of government, aristocracy, monarchy, and then democracy. Of those, which did Aristotle think would lead to the greatest happiness? Or to at least to the best government?
As stated, he thought a polity would work the best because it kept the rich from warring. In fact, he thought the government of a democracy, which is what Athens had and what many of our founders thought, a democracy which many of our founders thought and Aristotle thought was bad. And so we use the science of politics to improve on it and make a democratic republic.
He thought that a monarchy was better than a tyranny and an aristocracy was better than oligarchy because it all included the morals of the people in charge in general. So that's why he thought they were better.
So how then did he define polity? He gave it a very precise definition. Do you remember what that was? Or or at least he talked about it in a different, in an interesting way. What did he say? What is a polity?
So Aristotle, a polity was where the middle class citizens can be in charge, but he had a very narrow definition of what a citizen was. Back in his time, this wouldn't be women, this wouldn't be slaves. It was just these very virtuous people who were interested in trying to take the best care of their community as they could.
In other words, people like Aristotle.
Yes.
Very good, thank you.
In addition to the middle class being the most numerous class, he stated that in a society in which the middle class is most numerous, there occurs less factions and divisions. And so therefore, people can be more focused on the common good and it'll be more beneficial to the society as a whole.
Great.
And
Thank
he
you.
thought the best means.
Let's let Gina get her chance to ask you a question.
So the question that I have for you all is building on this same theme. So one of the ends of a federal republic, according to the founders, is avoiding the most common faction, that between the rich and the poor. How effective has the US Constitution been in this regard?
One could argue that it has not been effective at all. This is because of the amount of money that has to be put into running an election campaign. And it makes it so that only the rich can run and successfully get out advertisements for their campaigns.
I agree with Zoe. There's been a lot of lobbying in Congress lately, such as Big Pharma spending upwards of $200 million a year, according to Open Secrets. And that means that the rich people who are running these companies and the CEOs who have lots more money than the common people get to make choices that affect the 99% of people. And this has actually led to rising costs of medication because Congress is no longer trying to really effectively limit it, which doesn't help the poor people.
This was cemented by Citizens United versus the Federal Election Commission as decided in 2010.
So there is some discussion about, by Aristotle, about sort of a mixed form of government. And I'm wondering if you would agree that our Constitution incorporates sort of all three forms, rule by one, rule by a few, and the many. Does that incorporate it in our Constitution? Do you agree or disagree with that?
I agree that it's incorporated into our Constitution because the separation between Articles 1, 2, and 3, which the legislative branch, the executive branch, and the judicial branch represents kind of like a separation between the branches, but they're all under one document. For example, the judiciary is more rule of the few, executive rule of the one, and legislative rule of the many.
I think we can also very clearly see this in many of our articles, specifically Article 5. It allows both the rule of the few and the rule of the many. It allows the states, aka the many, to alter our government, but it also lets the few, aka the Senate, to also alter our government with amendments.
Do you believe that that structure, that separation of power structure, is as effective today as it was at the time of the founding? And if not, why not? And what would you do about it? There's like 3 questions in there, but do the best you can.
Okay,
What do you think?
it's time for feedback.
Oh, shoot. Ran out of time. Sorry. Gosh, and that was going to be a great question.
If
Well,
someone had started answering the question, I would have let them go for at least a sentence. But
we do whatever John tells us, so that's all good. Well, I just want to thank you for a fascinating discussion about Aristotle and separation of powers and limited government and all of that. And I just want to say that I thought you demonstrated good command of the material. You know, my question about initiative referendum and recall, I think you did well on it. I think, you know, if we had more time to explore, I suppose we could have talked about the, you know, the fondness of the progressive era for more public involvement. And Aristotle's somewhat, I think we could call him somewhat of a skeptic about the democratic approach and how those things play out. But I think you talked a lot about the importance of the public involvement, and
are we frozen up?
Public sees it that way. Andy?
Maybe I'll jump in since Tandy
Go
seems
ahead.
to be frozen. I thought you all did a really great job, particularly in terms of the varieties and specificity of the evidence that you brought to bear on the question. You are also did a really nice job of responding specifically to the questions that were asked of you. If I had a little bit of a want, it would have only been that you would have talked about majority faction and the founder's fear, right, of the property lists being overruling, right, the proper deed. And so we've got kind of, your focus was I think, right on, but a shift from those original fears. Nice job.
Yes, I would agree with that. Americans who don't like what most people are doing will call it populism, be concerned for it, and Americans who do like what everybody else is thinking would call it democracy. So we're not entirely sure now how we feel about those things. Great discussion, extremely good use of very specific evidence to support your answers. You had it well organized, using Hamilton on one side and Madison, Jefferson on the other, so putting Adams in the middle was a very effective way to present those fairly complex ideas. And no one has ever spoken of Aristotle as someone who was just way too easy to understand. You did a great job with Aristotle, and I really enjoyed our conversation. So thank you very much.
And let's give them a bit of applause here.